Welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines, and we usually here on the podcast, we're talking about anything and everything to do with athletic performance, usually aimed towards jumpers, not always, but most of the time, anything sprint training, plyos, strength, power. And it's my pleasure today to be joined by Harold Rose, who goes by HD. And Coach Rose, I saw your stuff as usual. Those people who have been following the podcast know that I do most of my living through Instagram. So I came across your stuff, and one of the first pictures I saw somebody jumping off of a platform, and I was like, oh, great, and then I start watching to see what's going on, watch the drill, start looking through all your other stuff. So I'm one of those shameless, searchers for great drills and, to see what's going on. And then I saw Vanderbilt vertical jumps coach. So I'm thinking, okay, high jump pole vault. And then I saw a bunch of other stuff. So welcome. And thanks for coming on. It's we got this together relatively quickly, right? Within.
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And then, so I'm a West Coaster. So, and you got to pardon me because I haven't traveled a lot. I've been to the East Coast a few times. Where is Vanderbilt? I've seen the name. I've obviously seen sports with Vanderbilt in there and everything, but I have no idea where it is.
Vanderbilt is in Nashville, Tennessee. Listen,
Awesome.
all the Swifties know where it is because Taylor Swift's also from Nashville.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, we get some of them listening in. We can do like the Chiefs and all of a sudden have a much bigger following. All right. So, right. All right. So Vanderbilt's in Tennessee. So does that make you by default Titans and fan in sports and all that, or?
You know what? I'll say so. Like I'm originally from Florida. I'm Jacksonville, Florida. Derek here is
Okay.
Florida guy. So
Right.
you gotta support the home team guys.
Right. Okay. Now, Harold, where did you go to school before you started doing all your coaching?
Okay, so went to high school in Jacksonville. I went to Wolfson High School, pretty prominent track and field high school. But then for university, I went to Bethune-Cookman. And
Okay.
then on for master's, I ended up going to Mississippi Valley State University.
Whoa. All right. Mississippi Valley State holds a great place in my heart because of the famous Jerry Rice. I'm a 49ers fan. And the fact that Jerry went there was like, I remember when he got drafted, and I remember thinking, who is Jerry Rice? I saw Mississippi Valley State, and I was like, okay. And then all I ever heard was these great reports out of the 49er camp about how much they loved their pick. His rookie year, I think, was 85. So they had just won the Super Bowl. And then he came in the next year and, was great, obviously. And then, Mississippi Valley State. All right. So I don't know enough about Jerry's background. Did he do any track and field, or did he just do football?
He was more of a football guy. Like he's a hard work guy. Like he
Yeah.
spends time running routes, doing drills, like catching bricks, working on his dexterity and
Yeah.
things like that. But Jerry Rice was like a master route runner.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And like the guy was a magician to be not one of the faster guys
Right.
and to be as dominant as he was. I think it's crazy.
Hard to cover, like you said, even though he wasn't a speed burner, he always seemed to get open. Yeah. And it's funny that we're talking about this because just today I was on YouTube, and I'm a Niner fan. So every week I love listening to everybody either say they think Brock Purdy is legit or he's a system guy, on and on. And I remember the first game I watched him, I thought, God, he reminds me of Montana. He gets the ball real quick. It's always a beautiful ball, and it's usually exactly where it's supposed to be. That was the one thing I always remember about Montana. You didn't go, dang it, he completely missed that guy, or it was behind him. Most of the time, the ball was exactly where you would want it, so that you could just catch it and then run with it. And I'm like, why doesn't anybody recognize that he's doing the same things Montana did? Like, the reason they have all these yards after catch is because he's getting people right out of their breaks. They can catch and tuck and start running immediately. And they can find the backer or whoever's coming to hit them and make them miss. I mean, Roger Craig made a career out of that. I mean, he would hit Craig in the flat, and the first guy that would show up, he made a miss so many times I don't think I even remember a guy ever getting the first guy to get him. It's like he would
Yeah,
invariably make the first guy miss because he could see
yeah.
him coming the whole way because the throw was always good. So yeah, it's and I was listening to that, and then it was like it started. I found another article that or a talk that was on Montana talking about
Mm,
rice, and I'd never really heard Joe go into the details on
mm,
why Jerry Rice was so good, and he told that a famous story, which I love telling. When I was coaching football, I did the same. I remember telling my kids, I go, look, when we do this, the opening passing drill, and you got four lines, you got guys on the numbers,
mm.
guys on the hashes, and you're like, guys are running just slants or fades or
Yes.
whatever. And you go, okay, when you catch it, I'm like, don't just run your route, catch it, and then run back to me and hand me the ball. I'm like,
Hmm.
catch it, head up field.
Yes.
Head up field. As I told him, I go, when Jerry Rice got to the Niners, they were doing a practice and he ran a hook and he caught the ball and then he tucked it and he ran the other way like 60 yards. And they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, that's what I do. I catch the ball and I go score touchdowns.
I go no.
Like
Yes.
I turn, I start going the other way. It's like, and and Montana was talking about it. He goes, it kind of rubbed off on us after a while once we saw him playing and he did score a lot of touchdowns. Like he's kind of used to going and scoring touchdowns.
Hmm.
It's like, so you
Yes.
catch it and you go the other way. I'm like, it's simple, but could you guys please try to do that on this drill?
Yeah. Well, it's super effective because we talk about muscle memory, right? Or we talk
Mm-hmm.
about athlete's ability to visualize. So if you're catching a curl and you're thinking about different coverages, right? Like, hey,
Right.
if it's cover two, cover three, man coverage, hey, when I catch the ball, where would the DB be,
Yes.
and where would the safety over the top be?
Right.
And I guarantee if you go back and watch that, he's emulating, hey, this is where I would need to
Yes.
position myself to gain the most yardage.
Right. Right. And then if you're lucky, him both with Montana and with Young,
Hmm.
lucky enough to work with a guy that can throw you open, put it right
Yeah,
where it's
put it
got to be.
here, back shoulder, wherever you
Yeah.
need it.
Wherever
Right.
you need it. And they're trying desperately not to get you killed because they know how valuable you are. Like Brock threw one or two in a row this last week that really got the tight end Kittle got popped.
Right
Like
across the
one of the
middle.
first times I saw, and he really squeezed the ball right in between two guys, and George got hit. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen George get hit. Like usually he hits somebody else, but he
Yeah.
didn't usually get hit like that. And of course he got right back up. And he did it to him again a couple plays later. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And then
Someone lost a
after the
bet.
first four or five throws and all that, then just like the week before against the Eagles, all of a sudden he was on point and didn't miss anything. So it was like, okay. But although he did throw that one pick. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background, Harold. You talked about high school in Jacksonville and all that.
Hmm.
What sports did you do, and how'd you end up becoming the vertical jumps coach at Vanderbilt?
So funny enough, I remember as a kid, one of my older cousins used to have us high jumping on our grandmother's couch.
Right.
And it's such a weird thing to learn to flop as like a 8, 9 year old
Mm-hmm.
from like a high school cousin. And it's like, I don't know, it's like it's not even like it's not a flat
Right.
couch. It's like you're hitting
Right.
the back of the thing.
Very little landing
So,
area. Yeah.
yeah, but you're learning this skill that you have no understanding of the event, right?
Right.
But kids are malleable, and I grew up with in the house with like five other cousins and things like that, and it was like I think growing up around other kids, you become very competitive.
Yes.
And when you're younger and they have was an age gap of a kid that's 9 or 8, like the difference in skill level is just huge at that
Right.
time. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember like I had a cousin who's like 1 year older. He like we're almost like brothers, and we fight every day. We would play sports, and he was so skilled, right? I think I was better in the physicality side. I think I was more like I was stronger, a little more
Right.
dynamic, but he was just such skill, great, great dribbler, great shooter, like all the stuff. It's like, and he was technically the baby
Mm-hmm.
of my cousins, but he was older than me, so he was almost like my big brother. So I'm
Yeah.
always getting schooled. it was a interesting time growing up, and you know, but you learn a few things, and um, went to high school at Wolfson High School. Played football. Played basketball when I was younger than playing high school. Ran track. I actually got into the pole vault when I was in 10th grade, and
Nice.
I ended up being nationally ranked that summer. It was like very, very, very fast. Like you get certain things you do, and like my mama to say tell you to this day, she's like, "Oh, you're meant to pole vault."
Right.
And like she like it was the thing that you took, and it just you like I went 15 feet my first like in probably about 9, 10 weeks of training.
Really? That's
Oh,
amazing.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like because I remember like the coach, like I went over, coach said, "Oh, hey, I'm looking for guys that want to try to pole vault." I was like, "Okay." And then he's like, "No, Harold, I'm like, I don't want you to do it." I'm like, "Oh,
Why not?
whatever." Yeah, I was doing long jump and some other stuff. But and then a couple weeks later, he was like, I had a dream that you could pole vault. I was like, I already told you I could pole vault, right? I'd never done it before. But
Right.
I got a little confidence. So I go over there, end up winning conference, winning district, and end up breaking my pole at regionals.
Wow.
So it was just like instant success. And it was like, oh, I just thought this was gonna work. I was like, you didn't know. The guys you took over there were just not they weren't as athletic,
Right.
and that's fine. Because but you should have like I think I would say this, being a coach now, talent identification is such a key thing.
Oh yeah.
Being able to see the characteristics and kids who are eager to learn and
Mhm.
want to try different things. You gotta let them try. Like, hey, let's guide you. This it's
Yeah.
not no, it's hey, well, let's try. Let's see if this works. Let's see if that works. What
Yeah.
works for you, right?
Hmm.
Um, then went on. We ended up going on to win state. I ended up getting into the hurdles. I ended up becoming a decathlete in the summer. Like after my senior year, I ended up ranking fourth in the country.
Hmm.
Uh, and just on the work, did had a bad vault day, tweaked my back in the javelin, which was I didn't train. I didn't train for javelin
Right.
because Florida didn't have it at the time. And like the year before we won state my senior year, we lost about 1 point,
Hmm.
which was like to this day, like you always remember the
One
championship.
point in the decathlon. Wow. Yeah.
Oh, no, no team title, Florida High
Oh,
School
okay.
USA, and you still get a trophy when you get second place, and everyone gets a silver medal. Like I don't to this day I don't know where that medal is.
Right. Yeah.
Like it disappeared.
Oh.
Uh, but went on to university as a decathlete, ended up breaking our conference record like the first go around, and just having again more instant success as a multi, and ended up qualifying as a and for for regionals in the long jump, and then we ended up getting in. The coach we ended up getting was this guy was super smart. Like, and we talk about like how much impact a coach can have. Like, not to say that my coach the freshman year was not as good, but you had a coach who had worked with professional athletes who had seen it
Right.
at the highest levels, who's bringing in a higher level of a technical eye, and really he's got professionals coming with him. So now they bring in a different standard of an
Mhm.
approach, right? And so from there, it just the first year we butted heads, and then it just worked, right? Because he had strong opinions. I had strong views myself. I had been
Right.
successful. And, you know, after at the end of that first year, it was like, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He's really good. And
Yeah.
then from that, like to this day, like guys had multiple women sub 11, multiple national championships. Like I went
Mhm.
to cooking, we didn't have a track, and we had NCAA champions.
Wow.
So that if that says anything, so you know that taught me that you didn't have to have all the resources, all the bells and whistles
Right.
to be the top. And track and field is a very unique sport where it's not like football or basketball where hey, I got to go to a blue chip school and this such and such. No,
Right.
no, you and your coach can gel and they know what they're talking about. Listen, and they believe in you. I
Yeah.
think that's a huge component of it. And you know, sky's the limit. Like track and field is not the same as like I said, a lot of those other sports.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up, the a couple ways, the encouraging of the athletes, and then because I have a girl that I recruited this summer, and I just have the utmost. The first thing you mentioned was having an eye for stuff. So, it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to look at someone and go, okay, they're tall, and I think they could possibly high jump. Okay, everybody knows tall people are more desirable, blah, blah, blah. So, and then I
Yeah.
laugh at the girls because I've worked at schools where I didn't have a girl that was over 5'4", and
Mm,
5 footers and turn them into decent high jumpers, and I'm like, they would show up at these meets and there's these tall girls there wearing their Letterman's jacket with like 3 letters on them. And I go, look, they play basketball, volleyball, and they're running
yes.
track. I go, I guarantee you they can't get off the ground.
Mm,
And they'd be like,
yeah.
what are you saying, coach? I'm like, I'm just telling you, just because they're tall
Yeah.
doesn't mean they can jump, and at the
That's
same
it.
time, I would be the one trying to get someone tall like that to teach them how to jump, but at the, whatever. So I watched this girl one jump. She runs up and jumps. And I came up to her, and she's in the 8th grade at the time. And we're at some local little thing. And I go, hey, next time you come up, try to drive your knee across this direction. And she
Yeah.
didn't know me from Adam. And she goes, okay, boom. And she just hit way more vertical and got air. And her eyes opened like this big.
Yes.
So that was the start of our relationship. I recruited her immediately, sold her mom on it, and said, "Hey, let's get this girl going. I think she could be pretty good." Well, of course, she's such a good athlete. Everybody sees her and wants her to do all the sports. So she's got
Hmm.
volleyball coach. She's already playing club volleyball. Played volleyball this year as a freshman, and then after a couple weeks of track, the pole vaulter coach at the school that I just worked there as like a consultant. Let's say I do clinics for
Hmm.
them that with just the high jump. They have a very good pole vault coach, and she's like, "Well, I can turn that girl into state champion." I said, "That's exactly what I think I can do with her in the high jump." And so, but I didn't want to be that guy that goes, "Well, you can't have her, or you can't."
Hmm.
Like I saw her first. It's like, I go, first of all, you're the athlete. I said, if you want to do the pole vault, by all means, because I forget, and I apologize to the girl. There was one girl on the feed. I tend to follow anybody who's a jumper, high, longer triple, pole vaulters. I've had a few sprinters, and like I said, anything of interest that I can use. And so I remember one girl who's like a 14'6" pole vaulter and like 5'8" high jumper, and was state champion in both. And I
Nice.
said, why would
Well,
I
exactly.
want to be the buzzkill and say, you can't do that? It's gonna affect my training or whatever. I'm like, if you want to
No.
do it. Let's go for it. Be 2-time state champ in 2 different events. It's been done before. So, why not?
Oh,
Who am I to say you
absolutely.
can't?
No, I think that's a like what you said is a underrated thing. Like not being selfish, allowing for the athlete to explore and expand on their potential, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, like you said, why not? Instead of saying why.
Yeah.
Because like, hey, if they have the ability to vertical jump and they have a passion for pole vault is a very special event.
Hmm.
Try to convince someone into doing it, but there's always a moment where they have to go. They decide whether they're going to be a pole vaulter or they're just not. It's
Right.
just, there's a
Right.
moment, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's like as a pole vaulter, like once you get to a certain height or a certain takeoff distance, it's like, okay, this is or this isn't for me.
Right. Because it starts to get pretty crazy. Yeah. You've got to be, I think, it was funny you said, brought up the pole vaulting in your sophomore year. I went to a 3-year junior high. So my first year in high school was as a 10th grader. So my sophomore year, I got to Millikan High School in Long Beach, and they
Mm-hmm.
had a very strong pole vault tradition. Mike Tully went to UCLA from Millikan High School. He had all the school
Nice.
records. His brother, Steve Tully, I just did a podcast with Steve just last
Yep,
week,
yep.
and very strong tradition. Dick Tomlinson was a pole vault coach. His son, Dave, was at school. He was a year in front of me. He was
Nice.
a 15-footer. So there was tons of pole vault stuff going on there. When I walked out, the poles were laying on the ground and the pit was
Yep.
out. And that was it, because we didn't
Oh,
have a coach. Dave was being coached by his dad. And then,
got it.
the coaches at our level were like, there are the poles. I was like, okay, well, I've seen this on TV, man. Let's go. It's like, I don't
Yo.
even remember ever being shown how to grip it or whatever. Like, I'm just one of those
Yes.
people. Like, when I've seen it, I got a rough idea how it's going to
Yeah.
go. And I'm like, okay. But I always wanted to try it. So I just ran down there. I almost gave up high jumping for pole vaulting my sophomore year. I had so much fun doing it and not really having any idea. Nobody was teaching me anything. It was like we just did it. You'd hold on and try to pull your way
Yes.
over and throw it back, and you learned quick.
No.
So yeah, I mean, when I go back to my start in the high jump, it was the same way because I started jumping when I was 12 was 1976. So I think the flop had
Mm,
only been around for 8 years. And I
yes.
don't know when I saw it for the first time, but the first time
Mm,
I ran up and jumped, I was already doing it. I immediately
yeah,
just
yeah.
jumped and went over on my back. I didn't do the roll. I didn't do anything like that. It was like this looks like the easiest thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, but then when you see someone do something like that for the first time, like you said, you can tell there's certain people you're just like, oh man, that looks good.
Yes.
You can
Well,
tell.
well, the cool thing is, so in middle school, I was a really good high jumper, and I could actually dunk a basketball in middle
Hmm.
school. And so when I got to high school, I thought I was gonna, oh, I'm gonna be a high jumper, and
Right.
it just didn't, like, I didn't like certain programs if they have a certain culture, and if you don't have a coach who's interested, you kind of like young people are very impressionable, and they're like, well, the long jump coach seems like they actually are there to coach. And what I think Nick Saban said it best: good athletes want to be coached.
Yeah.
They don't want to just be over there messing around and like just kind of being like freelancing. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be that good that way.
Right.
And like my middle school coach, he was like, this guy was probably one of the best culture coaches I've ever seen because he preached discipline. He like we used to run 5Ks in middle school, and I was like, what in the world? It's
Right.
insane. Like I think about it now, it's like we're running 5Ks. That's wow. Like every Thursday, and we were
Really.
6 a.m. Yeah, it's in Florida, so we were just going after. It. But like he taught us discipline and accountability and just certain stuff. Like I think now it's like, oh, that guy was he was like as a culture builder,
Yeah.
like second to none,
Yeah.
second to like really really good.
Hmm.
And that was for basketball. So it was like he like we're locked in. And what's crazy was our the seventh grade coach was probably a better basketball coach, and she was just real chill.
Hmm.
Not really like she was a little more like, hey, let's just have fun. And she was very strategic in who she played, make sure everyone get reps,
Yeah.
but she was good. He was more the hey, take control, build a like because he also coached football. Mind you, we had like a sucky football team. I think our football team, my seventh grade year, lost every game.
Right.
And it's like you guys don't know where to put the pieces on this thing.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
guys gotta figure this out. But no, saying that to say you start to realize like as an athlete if you have if you're capable of doing a lot of different things you're going to be pulled in different directions and
Sure.
I think the influence in people who can speak very well I think that's such a it's an underrated skill like
Hmm.
and I think as a coach you got to be a master motivator you got to be able to connect at the level and meet them where they are to bring them to
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
are right so no I
Yeah.
think it's super important.
That's yeah, it's interesting. This has been a new experience for me because I've never really gone out and said I'm going to try to recruit incoming
Mm.
eighth graders. I was working at with the summer group at this school, and I knew she was going to feed in there, so I'd already kind of gotten her going. But then they just had a real glut of incoming freshmen, and
Mm.
we're just doing drills, and there's these tall pretty good. They're learning how to cycle. They're doing all their drills, and I'm just like, well, she's pretty tall too. And are you gonna be trying the
Mhm.
hurdles or whatever? So you come over here. So I'm trying
Mhm.
to put together this whole freshman group because the older kids didn't really kind of different group didn't connect with as well and I was like okay um and then this group I'm just like right from the beginning but the other thing I had going was a motivation
Mhm.
because I've been watching the high jumpers for a couple of years now and I was a traditional American power jumper. I was gathered
Mm.
arms back reach back boom
Yes.
and drive up big knee I wasn't super flexible, but I could get in an okay position. I worked on
Yes.
that more when I got a coach in college, but in high school, I was just kind of a leaper. I could dunk a basketball, like you said. Figured
Mm-hmm.
that out as a sophomore or junior, because I couldn't palm, so I would
Mm.
always throw the ball off the back rim. And then, the guy that was a jumper in front of me who jumped 6'10", Dave Wicker, he was,
Yeah.
a year in front of me. And he said, just take it up with two hands, like you're gonna, like you're running off
Mm-hmm.
the ground. And I was like, oh, I'm like, oh,
Mm.
that's easy. That's great. So, I was a power guy. And so I did not understand, nor did I see really any time in high school or college, any single armors. There were no people
Mm.
that ran through fast, popped that arm up in the air, and just went flying. I just don't remember it. And so even in '84, I was a sophomore at UCLA, and I watched a guy named Dietmar Mogenberg from West Germany win the gold medal in '84, and he was a single armor. Patrick Sjöberg from Sweden was a
Yeah.
single armor. They went 1-2, and
Yes.
I remember watching that going, those guys aren't really jumping. They're just fast. They're
They're
tall. They're
running off the
skinny,
ground.
blah, blah, blah. They're just running off the ground. Yeah, I said the same thing. And they're already getting pulled into the bar. It looks like they're laying out, blah, blah, blah. So I watch that. I'm like, that's not really high jumping. They're just tall. It's all about the body type. And then I've seen some smaller people do that pretty well too. Stephen Holm,
At the home.
5'11" and
Oh,
a half, jumps 7'11" and a half. He's
crazy.
a single armor. And I start going through it. And so with me, it didn't become an obsession, but I was like, I want to build one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna build a single armor, but I didn't. I kind of waited because I didn't want to try to force someone to do it. Like if
Mm.
they were struggling. Sometimes you watch somebody jump. I'm like, we got to figure out something you're gonna do with your arms because you can see that they've got some pop, but
Yes.
in 3 different approaches to the bar, they use their arms different every time. One time it's both arms were back. One time one was back, one was up. One time it
Yes.
was this, and I'm just like, one time they just didn't even use this arm. Like, okay, we gotta get you a set
Yes.
that really, really works. And so I would start to show them. I go, this is easiest for me now. Keep this in mind. I said, this is easy because this is what I did. I'm not saying that you need to do this, but I found it easy to go gather. And then I had 2 steps to get my arms back and jump. And then
Understood.
they'll try it and sometimes pick it right up. And other times, after 10 minutes of, walkthroughs and jog throughs, and I'm like, no, no, okay, that's not it. Let's try, because
Yeah.
I would say, I would show them, I go, this is a true Fosbury. I go, in all my years of coaching, I've worked with no, 2 kids now that have come up and done a true reverse Fosbury where you're like, looks like you're doing the long jump instead of the high jump, where the
Mm.
inside arm reverses and comes down. And,
Yes.
I'm like, that's to me, that just doesn't make any sense. And I think it's more, again, body type. But then both of the girls that I coached that did that were shorter and could barely jump 4'10" or 5 feet.
Oh,
So I'm
because
just like,
it's almost like a hitch kick.
yeah, I'm like, I don't, I told him, I go, hey, I can teach you how to do that better. Said I tried it and I could not get off the ground doing that
Mm.
with my arms. Nothing. Now that I'm getting older, I actually kind of like the single because I'm like, I've lost enough of my pop where I think putting that arm over my head makes me taller, and it raises my center of mass. I go, I don't have to do that much work. Like I used to have to drive both arms and the knee.
Yeah.
Now I'm
Yes.
like, this just made me up. I'm like 8 feet tall if I get this arm up here. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't have to leave the ground like that much. So I was looking at old films. You watch Dr. J, dribble,
Yep.
dribble, palm it, put
Put
it
it
up with
up.
your head, and then jump. Right? Literally, you
Yes.
can see it get up first, and then here comes the knee and the arm. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's a center of mass deal. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, listen, and that's so. To get into to a little bit on the philosophy side, listen, what everything you're saying is 1,000% correct. And I think when we talk about athletes not being able to connect, like be consistent with their arms,
mm-hmm.
and they're coming from different sports, and they've always been taught, oh, you're tall, so you're better. And it's like, yeah, but they're not actually athletic. They don't have the requisite dexterity in the upper body as
Right,
they have in the lower body.
right,
And then we see the more athletic, shorter people. jump well over their heads, and
Yeah.
it's like they're better mechanical, more efficient jumpers. They're able to
Mm.
transfer force through their bodies, just a
Right.
lot better. Now we know a bigger, you know what they say, mass is gas, right? So
Right.
you have a longer frame. You can that force can travel through your body a lot better. And
Yeah.
like one of the guys who I remember my first year in university, we were in Orlando and we went to this thing with I can't remember the coach name, but Larry, I remember Larry Myers was one of the speakers. So it was like a Team USA elite
Hmm.
thing. One my teammate was a really good triple jumper. I was young and up and coming, and there was a couple other guys in there. And it was just kind of like this little special thing, and it was dartfish. This is the first my first introduction to like dartfish, and you're in there just like, oh my goodness, like these guys, like it was so high level. And I remember eat right, train right, rest right, and that was they kept driving that point home.
Hmm.
Like now as a coach, it's like, oh, it's like yeah, that's the formula, that's the
Yeah.
formula. But a lot of the biomechanics that they were going through at that time, keeping the center of mass, being able to work through positions,
Hmm.
rigidity through the body, like
Right.
force traveling in straight lines. And then I want to say that same weekend, Paul Souza, he had this thing, he had the concept of the straight stick.
Hmm.
And this was in like early 2000s.
Right.
I'm like, what is I'm like you kind of understand it, but don't understand it at the same time. And then you see the videos now, it's like, yeah, this is the concept is the concept. It's always been the concept.
Right. Right.
Force travels in straight lines. So if you become the conductor and you can send that force through your body, guess
Yep.
what? You don't have to do all that extra stuff. Let the elastic system transfer that force, and
Hmm.
you just move through it, and it
Yep.
saves you ton of injuries, ton
Hmm.
of injuries,
Yeah.
and beating up your legs, beating up your shins, jacking up your back, like
Right.
all this extra torque that people are trying to. It's like, listen, it's everything. Like my philosophy is everything happens on the ground. It's like if like once something is in flight, you've already created the path. Now you can help that or hurt that,
Right.
but everything like the forces in the body. Like if I throw a football or if I anything,
Yeah.
once it leaves my hand, the trajectory is set. Now if it's
Yep.
in a spiral, it may stay a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
If it's a little bit wobbly, then it's
It
going to
might
give.
not go as far, but yeah, pretty much the same.
Yeah, so but I really like for us here, we spend a ton of time of developing the athleticism,
Hmm.
right? Because like right now we see several kids haven't played outside as much. So it's like, okay, we're doing lateral movement. We're doing lateral medial. We're doing change of direction stuff. We're
Hmm.
doing tons of lower limb, tons of upper body things, single leg catches, single arm catches. And
Right.
then like for them, it's like, well, how does me catching a ball relate to like catching a tennis ball, standing on
Right.
one leg relate to me? And it's like, well, it's also training your eyes and your coordination.
Yes.
Because if you played basketball, you played volleyball, your eye's ability to track and your body's ability to like not it's not technically multitask, but what is it called? Because technically it's a humans can't multitask. Is the ability to sequence orders and organize yourself while focusing on what is it, attending to a particular object.
Right.
Because if I put something up here and you can't stand on one leg, it- we've just added a dynamic to where you can't maintain focus, you can't
Right.
maintain rigidity, and we're lacking a level of coordination that we definitely need
Hmm.
because vertical jumping is arguably the most athletic thing you can do,
Right.
like outside of sprinting fast.
Hmm.
But vertical jumping is one of those things where, like, and what's crazy is you have people who jump high and you have people who are high jumpers.
Right.
They're not the same thing.
Not always. Yeah.
No, look, now if you can get a high jumper to jump higher, then they'll be a better high jumper.
Right.
And that's a big part of my philosophy. So we start doing like we'll do vertical jump testing, and this is highly European
Hmm.
because if your CNS is off, what are we going to do that day? Right? Like uh, I'm going to try to full approach you to death,
Right.
or we're gonna say, hey, you know what? Today's just not that day. We need to do something. Let's work on. Let's walk through. Let's drill through. Let's do some things that may not require us to need as much neurological uh
Hmm.
activity, but we're still working through the proper patterns, the proper channels, and things that we can do to help you with that, or maybe even some assist work.
Right.
Because I think being able to create certain patterns or use boxes and use different things to do use different mechanisms to say, hey, like we're gonna go off a box so it's less forced on your legs, right? Or hey, you know what, you're gassed up. We're gonna step down off a box so we can create so you can get used to handling more elastic forces in your body.
Right.
And now when you're coming off the ground, it's like, oh my, I'm not buckling at the knee as much. It's
Hmm.
like, yeah, because now
Right.
you're everything's happening, and now you felt that position, even though you weren't 100%, or hey, you were gassed up that day. When you get to the meet and you're gassed up, that same energy comes back because you felt the rhythm, you felt the timing,
Right.
and it's creating those positions and creating that timing through the system. So,
Man. Yeah, I
so
like that. Teaching them how to be better athletes is huge. I don't know where it started for me. When I was 12, I started watching the Olympics at 8 in 72, but I was really young. I remember Olga Korbut from the Soviet
mhm.
Union doing the gymnastics stuff. And I think Mark Spitz won 7 gold medals swimming.
Yes,
A lot of things that happened. And unfortunately, the episode with the Israeli athletes, happened in Munich. And then 4 years later was 76. And the U.S. boxing team that year was amazing. Sugar Ray Leonard,
hooray.
Leon Spinks and his brother Michael, a guy out here, Paul Gonzalez was from LA. All of these guys went on to be world champions and Olympic gold medalists and world champions.
Oh, wow.
Leon Spinks beat Muhammad Ali. Michael Spinks had the heavyweight title later on, was a light heavy, and then had the heavyweight title, got knocked out by Tyson. Um,
Yes, I remember that.
Sugar Ray was a great fighter, won multiple weight classes, world titles. Is just an outrageous time. And
So
I
fast.
remember watching Sugar Ray skip rope. And I
Oh,
watched the hand and the feet and everything, and so I'd seen it, but there was never, I don't remember a time anywhere through school or anything where anybody even said anything about ropes. I
mhm.
may have done a little in football. I don't think so. But when I got to UCLA, one of the first things they had in the weight room was a great long rope, and I saw a couple of people doing it, and it was just one of those things that when I picked it up, I was like, oh, and I just started skipping rope. And then it was like I could go 2 feet, you know,
Mhm.
and I would just bounce on 2 feet, but I had decent rhythm, for a white guy. And I was like, so I'm skipping around going, okay, that's pretty cool. And then I saw somebody like running,
Ye
running. And I think
yes.
it had to be on the track because I remember seeing people run in place. And then I saw people running with the rope.
Jump rope
You
runs.
can run and keep the rope moving. So I've done all of those things. And like is one of the things I have one of my best female athlete, Barbara Bachaka from Canada. She came down here
Mm.
and she saw my stuff online. She said, I just want to come train. So she
Yes,
came down and trained. And I was one who said, here, as once we're done warming up, grab this rope.
rope.
Let me see you move. And
Yes.
she went from like, I don't understand why we're doing this, to like she loves the rope now. She has to have jump rope in her warm up. She's like, I don't even feel like I'm warmed up unless I skip rope. And I'm like, awesome. I'm like forward and back, side to side, start
Yes.
with both legs, do 2-footed hops. My philosophy is always go 2 legs and then, do it quick as you can and then go to one leg. Same thing with
Mhm.
weights and same things with plyos. I'm like, everything's always easier with 2 legs.
Mhm.
If you're using your legs, it's easier to do two. I said if you're doing some other things like sit-ups, it's harder to do both legs at once. So you want to start with one. But it's like,
Mhm.
but anyway, she ate that up, and I'm like, I don't care what you do. You can hop around and do little squares. I'm like,
Yep.
but do it
Yep.
quick, and it gives you such great balance, coordination, timing.
Yes.
I said, you watch. I remember
100%.
watching Sugar Ray thing. I said, look it up online. Go get online and just go boxers skipping rope. Watch Muhammad
Mm.
Ali. You watch those guys, they were a blur, just a blur.
Oh,
There's like
bro.
they're skipping, they're switching, they're doubles. They start doing this, and I'm just like going, you're watching it going, that's amazing. I mean, I think I'm pretty good with the rope, but I can't do, I've watched some of those people on their sites that do some stuff where you're like these
Oh,
routines where they're
yeah.
they're turning around in space and switching over and going
Oh,
backwards and forwards and doing jumps themselves in the middle while keeping the rope going. I'm like, wow, like I thought I was good. That's not even close to what they're doing. But I
yeah.
mean, obviously that's great athleticism, right?
Oh,
It's
for
got so
sure.
many elements of what we're talking about. And, manipulating your body in space, your high
Mhm.
jumpers, your pole vault, your long jumpers, you know,
Yes.
for years I've been like, I watch some people long jump. I'm like, I don't even know how this person had a career. I go, I watch them hit the sand and I go, that just looks brutal. Like, coming down hard, wrong angle, bam.
Hmm.
I'm just like, why wouldn't you get your legs out of the way? Like I watch people, I watch this, I'm watching somebody hitch, and then I love when they kick out to the side and they don't even hit hard in the sand. I'm like, I don't even know how to do that, but I want to do that. Like that looks like that
Yeah.
makes more sense to me. Um, but having awareness of where you are in space, I mean, all those things, it's not the magic cure all, but it is
Yes.
a great thing to have in the warm up and as part of your training for sure. I'm
No.
really intrigued by all the stuff you're talking about. When you start talking about CNS, I'm like right there with you. Like, I need them to be fast and
Yeah.
explosive and twitchy, but they also need to have control. You can't just be, quickly explosive and not be able to do something once you've done that, right?
No, for sure. And so it's funny you say that because like so I work with one of my colleagues, he coaches the multi, like we work really closely together. We actually competed in the same conference as Justin Byron, or we call him Coach JB.
Mm-hmm.
So like kind of interesting staff. Like so our head coach is Coach Althea Thomas, but we call her Coach AT.
Right.
She actually coached Matt Bowling at Georgia to a national title. She coached Lena Irby. She was there during that time. So the
Mm-hmm.
main leader at the helm, like our AD's superstar, like Candice Lee, first woman AD in the SEC, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like, look, she came here when she was 17 and never left. So
Wow.
she's got 3 degrees from Vanderbilt. So like she's like Michelle Obama. Like you talk to her, you're like, oh my goodness, this lady's like super sharp.
Uh-huh.
And but Coach JB, we talk a lot to our athletes in the early phases about autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
getting that total autonomy of your body because like you're beating a dead horse if you get an athlete. Like some people love recruiting athletes with a gymnastics background because those kids already have a lot of the awareness and a
Right.
lot of core control.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you get other athletes, it's like, how do we, and what I say is create the button because those athletes who just have that button and they can just, once they're in competition, the button goes and they're on turbo and it's like, oh my
Right.
goodness, they can do everything. They can make it happen
Right.
and they can maneuver themselves at catching balls out of bounds. They can do everything you want them to do. Now you have other athletes who may have not had that same type of experience and they don't have that awareness. So now you're telling them, hey, like you said, let's get this arm here, and they're like, here, and it's like, well, coach, it is up. Or you're saying, hey, I need you to run the turn where we're gonna run it like a tightrope, and I want you to stay tall and then their arms aren't moving at all, and
Right.
or they're throwing their left shoulder back and they're trying to angle around. And it's like, no, 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 relax. So
Yeah.
sometimes, so sometimes we'll take the arms out of the equation. Hey, let's put a stick on the back. Hey, let's walk it, skip it. You know,
Yeah.
we're gonna go through some dribbling, and now let's break like gradually speed it up. And I like how you said like that's a lot of what I do, especially when you have athletes, taller athletes who just are trying to figure their bodies out. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I'll say, hey, this is more like a one, so this is going to be a little slower, rhythmic, bouncy approach.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go to a little bit faster because we're trying to dial into that rhythm. It's
Yes.
really calibrating them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's like three, hey, I want you to try this as fast as you can. And they're going to mess it up, but
Sure.
it's how much of this can you how much of this can you preserve? So, hey, really focus on when you're transitioning, making sure that you're stepping across that midline, staying on your line, and just
Right.
working through that transition. Hey, don't bend at the waist. I know you saw this other kid dropping the inside shoulder.
Yep.
What I'll do is I'll stand there and I'll walk in a circle, and they'll just see my body lean. They're like, Coach, it's scary, and I'm like, I said, I'm not even running and my body's leaning.
Yeah.
So you don't have to help that. You're actually losing force through the whole body when you're bending at the waist. You
Yes.
just stay tall, let the hips lead. Let the hips lead the jump.
Yep.
Not like and keep it's a continuation. Everything is a continuation.
Yep.
Like
Oh,
it shouldn't be jointed.
well, there's a whole nother area. Like I tell them right away, first day, I had a brand new jumper just yesterday, and
Mhm.
she's coming off the ground. Her legs are strong. First thing we did was back-overs. So I like to see how they use their arms at all. So she immediately does almost like a back handspring, and I go automatically. I said, I looked at the dad. I go, she was in gymnastics, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, you know why? Because they always put their arms up first
Yep.
and they do a back dive over the
Yeah.
bar. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You know, bend forwards, drive your arms up, you know. But then part of it was the way she pointed her toes. She pointed her toes out and left them
Mm,
straight out and just was this long extended thing. And I'm like, I go, well, you
stiff.
know what? I don't have to teach you how to finish your jump because you're doing that. You're straight. I go, and you're leaving your toes pointed. I go, now I actually have to teach you how to bend so you'll spin, you know. But it was like, it was so funny. And then I'm looking at her leg was straight up and down, and her upper body was right into the bar. And I said,
Mm,
and I did exactly what you talked about. I go, you know what? I want your upper body lined up with your lower body. So
mm,
I don't want your upper body over here. I go, wherever your leg is, and it's her
mhm.
right leg. She's a right legger. I said, when you finish and you're extended straight up, and everybody will extend ankle, knee, hip, right? Boom,
Yes.
straight up. I go, when you're in that position, your upper body should be right there with it. I go, I
Mhm.
don't care what else is going on, but if you know, and I tell them what you were talking about was sequencing. I love that because I go, look,
Yes.
the field events are all sequential: high jump,
Oh,
long
sure.
jump, triple jump, pole vault, javelin, shot, disc, anything where you have an approach to an explosive event. There, everything has to go in a certain order. You can't start switching things up. I go, you know,
Mm-mm.
in the high jump, you're running in a straight line, you drop into a curve, you
Yes.
take off, you fly, and then you
Yep.
lay out. I said,
Yes.
that's ideally. And I said, the bulk of the high jump is in phases 1 and 2 when you're running at the bar. That's the longest part, but it has all kinds of stuff to do with how you do after that. But at the same time, all the real stuff happens here at 3, heel strike up through toe off. And I go, and that's 2/10 of a second, 1/10. I don't know. It's not very long.
No.
But in that time, an amazing amount of things are happening because all four limbs are hitting their crescendo on rhythm. And, you know, it's like,
Mm,
and I'm like, you got to finish this move, finish
yeah.
this first. Don't start tilting. I go, as soon as you do that, I said, if you're tilting this way and your foot hasn't left the ground yet, you're already
Mm.
in phase 5 and we haven't finished phase 3. I go, we're going to have to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, one,
Mhm.
two, three, over and over and over to where you can finish going hit vertical. Don't worry about, you know, because I think so many times these kids, they see, and it's more prevalent. I keep telling them, I go, you guys have disadvantage and advantage. I go, one of the disadvantages I had was I never saw anybody else jump unless I was jumping against them. You didn't see them
Mm.
on TV. You didn't see video. I don't have any videos of me. I mean, my whole high jump career, it's like I don't have anything. I mean, we had an RCA camcorder came out in 1982 that you could put on your shoulder, and it was like a television camera, and it weighed
Guy.
50
That big
pounds.
old
It
thing.
was heavy. So my friend Dave, the one who jumped 6'10", his dad would film us, and we watched a lot. And I think that's where my biomechanics eye was built because we
Mhm.
actually coached ourselves through a lot of things in high school. I'd be like, you'd watch and you could see what worked and what didn't work or whatever. You're like, oh, that looks really good, you know. And that's
Yes.
one thing I believe some athletes have where, and you and I both know there's different types. I was a complete angles and vectors and forces guy.
Mhm.
And I've seen the ones that are like that. They gravitate. They're easy to talk to. You're like, we're talking the same language. I've had other
Yes.
kids, you start talking to them and they start doing this.
Yes.
I'm talking to them like, hey, I want you to line this leg up with, and they're like, my hey, hey. And then I'm trying to get their attention, but it doesn't, it's not that they don't want to pay attention. It's that it's not interesting or it's not
Mhm.
the way they communicate. So
Yes.
yeah,
No, 100%.
it's so weird. I know we're touching on a bunch of areas at once, but I'm like, I don't know always how to reach those types. So I gotta immediately think. So I'm like, okay, they're not really going to follow you. And they start talking about how things feel. They're the ones that want to know how it feels. And they'll ask me, was I too close? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I thought you were, but how did it feel? Well, I felt like that was gonna, they start talking about how they feel more than what they saw. It's interesting.
Well, and see, I think like honestly, I love working with the guys that I work with because like I think I speak more like this, like very analytical, very technical. And
Mm-hmm.
Coach B, he's like, hey, he was like, they may not understand that, but because we coach it, because like we'll be out there together and certain things, he's like, I don't think he's like, I know what you said, but I don't think they got it. Or like we'll look at each other, and it's like if I'm saying it and he's seeing them, like he very amazing
Right.
communicator. And so he'll say, hey, you know, do this. And it's like, that's exactly what I just said. Or in the reverse for the kids who are like, it's like, hey, you have to put this here. And they're like, oh, because like we had so last year, uh the NCAA multi runner up was was coming from the University of Vanderbilt, Beatrice. And she like what she does is when she's going to high jumps, she'll put this arm over the top and this arm will stop. And I was like, I said the reason she's leaning in is because this arm's beating that arm. I said this
Right.
arm
It's
needs to
pushing
go
her.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said if she fires this and then you see it just like and she just takes off and it's like I didn't even think of that. I said, once that foot, so I said, she's trying to do this before the foot hits the ground. Let the foot contact first. The foot has to contact before you make that next move.
Right. Right.
And now get this hand here. Don't let this hand get here and that hand get over. And now you're just diving in. Punch the right hand through.
Yeah.
And now you get both. Everything just goes up. And now it's just natural and smooth.
I just want to show
So,
my dog Kirby to everybody for a second.
oh,
Kirby, come here. Come
what's
here, Kirby.
going on, buddy?
Come here. This is Kirby. Kirby, you're on
Okay,
screen.
what's
Say hi,
going
buddy. He had to come up and talk to me. He was getting
on? Nice.
chasing the kitty. Yeah, I know. She went and hid, huh?
Mm.
All right, that's Kirby the dog. He's been through most podcasts, but I don't usually put him on screen. I should
Oh,
have closed the door. He keeps running in and out, but as long as you guys can't hear him, he's all right.
well, I can't hear.
Um, yeah, well that's interesting. Finish up your thought. I don't want to
No,
interrupt.
but I'll say just having because having someone who can explain it in different ways or say, hey, they may respond better to something that's more game like or competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like so we brought out the Vertex, like the vertical jump tester, and you see the athletes who were able to generate like who can just fire their bodies and the athletes who couldn't.
Right.
And it's like, okay, when you do a vertical jump test versus a high jump, how they're able to produce force is different.
Yeah.
So we're doing standing jump and then we're doing like a drop step in and then running max vert. Like, but so two-footed jumps and then one foot, like one off one foot. And
Right.
you're seeing the ones who are able to say, I don't understand stepping in and pushing off two. And they're
Right.
just kind of like frazzled. And then we started doing like one where we're just stepping off the box and being reactive.
Yeah.
Same thing. And like you said, seeing what they're doing with their arms, seeing if they,
Yeah.
and that was what one of our jumpers said. She said, I love us doing the vertical jump because now it gets me used to putting my arms up here. Because
Yes.
she use her arms, but she's like, oh, it gets me, I feel myself driving my arms up. And I was like, but you play basketball. It's like, yeah, but in basketball, there's a ball.
To go get.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's an attention thing as opposed to, well, I'm not going to put my hand up here if the bar is here. I'm going to put my hand there. And it's like, no, no, no. You
Yeah.
put your hand here.
Right.
And so like figuring out those the things that you can do to repetitively teach the skill and now when they go back over they just do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like, well, how'd you get them to do that? It's like, well, we took them away from this setting. This setting didn't wasn't conducive to them learning it
Yes.
the way we needed them to do it. Like before I would I used to coach a girl named Nicole Green. So I coached her brother in the triple jump and then I did really well with her brother. So she was like, "Oh, I'll try this guy." So she was a 5'6" high jumper when I got her. Jumped 5'10" that summer and just understanding. And then she is national champion. She ended up jumping over 6 foot out of high school.
Wow.
I went to UNC, jumped 188,
Mm-hmm.
and she's superstar. Like I think 2017, two of the girls I had worked with, they lived like right down the street. Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Fields, who was a multi, jumped over 6 feet, and Nicole Green. So number one, number eight at the NCAA
Wow.
championship. Lived like high school rivals in the high jump.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
But
you go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, you were talking about the changing of the settings. That is
Yes.
just a huge topic with me right now because, like I said, these kids. This is to tie back to my earlier thought of like what you see. So these
Mm-hmm.
kids, they watch so much more. So if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
a coach, which this is one of the reasons why I'm in business. Most people can't make any money doing what I'm doing because they just either they're not qualified or if they are qualified, they can make more money doing something else. so,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll do that. I happen to still love the sport, so I've started up my business on the side from my coaching and stuff at the high school level. It's like additional, and I'm getting close to retirement age from teaching. So it's like, okay, I enjoy this. Let's pursue it and let's see if I can get these athletes to these high levels. So I'm working along, and you see these kids that don't have a coach. So what do? They go to YouTube and they watch a video. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff that's out there, and some of it's laughable and some of it's okay. And it's like, but if you're a kid, how would you know any different? So you're watching and you see someone who says, you need to do this, you need to throw your head back as hard as you can. And I'm just amazed how many times you'll hear the kids, they'll go, I'm sure you've heard this before. They'll go, my form isn't very good. They say, I jump, but my form's not very good. And I'm like, my brain is like, well, there's all kinds of different things that we're talking about here because there's
Yes.
running technique, there's how you use your arms and your knee drive at takeoff, there's
Yep.
layout position, there's this
Yes.
and that, the other thing. So I'm like going, but they almost invariably mean layout position when they say my
Yes.
form isn't good. Because if I say, well, your knee drive is outrageous and you have an outrageous hip punch,
Mm-hmm.
and I see an incredible position, the timing is for crap because you're in that position in the middle of takeoff. I'm like, if you can just wait to get in that position, we'll be golden, So I'm like, but as that one is so hard because if my contention is, and I want to write a book on this someday, if I could ever get another degree, it would be as a neuroscientist, but
Mm-hmm.
as a
Oh, we have a ton
somebody
of
that understands exactly how the brain learns things, because I believe within 5 reps, you can lay down habits that are incredibly hard to break. Because, like, say a kid, the bar's at 5 feet, and they come over and say, I want to try it. And they come over and they jump. And you don't say anything, you just go ahead and try it. So they run up and they go, well, how do you do this? And I'm like, some of them will just do it. And other ones will ask you to show them, or I'll say, well, watch a couple of these guys. They've been doing it for a while, and they'll try that, but a lot of them are just like, oh yeah, I've seen, they run up and they do it. So you go, okay, well, if a kid has success, and by success, I mean, they make the bar, it doesn't fall down, and all the other kids go, hey, you get a clap, clap, good job, right?
dopamine hit.
So what does your brain learn from that? I'm like, there's a couple things. Number one, as you start running, your brain's this amazing supercomputer that
Yes.
is aware of everything. It's aware of how bright it is, how dark it is, how it sounded, how it felt, where you were in space, like exactly how far away from the bar you were, and all kinds of stuff is in there, right? And it immediately gets stored and put away somewhere, and then you go do another rep, right? And it's like, I think they're all in there. I really do. If you had a way of, because I know they've done experiments, open brain surgery, they're sitting there, right? And they touch a neuron somewhere, and the person starts going, hey, I'm at grandma's house and I'm 5 years old and she's making cinnamon cookies, and oh, they smell so good. And they're like going, what in the heck did we just touch? And it's like, everything you've ever done is locked away in there somewhere. How do you get it back? Can you remember everything? Is it just a bad storage retrieval system? Or, I don't know, but it's like I say, look,
Prefrontal cortex and all that
yeah,
good
it's amazing, right? There's incredible amounts of memory. And I go, well, look, if I establish this pattern and it's a good pattern or it's a bad pattern, but if I get rewarded for it, then what are they going to do the second time they come up to the bar? They're going to immediately try the same thing they just did.
Oh, 100%.
If they can,
And
maybe they don't have the muscle control or they don't have a picture of it yet or whatever, but the natural athletes are probably just going to roll up and do the same thing they just did and
yes.
expect to get over because it worked the first time. Why wouldn't it work again, even though the bar went up, right? So that's where the thing with, some of these kids are real bendy and they'll hit a nice position. They'll get over the bar, even without really jumping, even without using their arms. I had two kids in the last 5 years that came to me that had some of the most outrageous flexibility and great bar position that you've ever seen in a jumper. And my first thing I said to them was, you need to develop the ability to forget this for a while, or we got to teach you how to get a knee drive and ride it up to where the bar is and then do that
Yes.
move. You know what I mean? And it's, man, you want to talk about some people, you can just say, there's the plan and they can do it. God bless them,
Yes.
make your life easy. And then there's the other ones that you're like, you try this and that doesn't work. And you try this and that doesn't work. And you try this and that doesn't work. And you're like, and I say God bless them too, because they make you a better coach. Because
Oh, for sure.
immediately at that point, I'm like, well, wait a minute. These are my three best tricks. These
No.
work wonders. I've taken people to state on this. Okay. And you're poo-pooing it. You could care less. It doesn't work for you. It's not happening,
Oh,
And you're like, okay, what's next on my magic trick list? I'm like, I'm out of tricks. I gotta think up something new, and it forces you into some creative outside the box thinking where you go, let's come up with another drill or let's try this, right? Oh,
yes. So funny. Okay, so funny enough, I was talking to so a friend of mine. He made this device called, actually I got one right here. Crazy enough, called a kinetic link,
mm-hmm.
and what it does is it's really a core trainer, but it helps to give the body a lot more awareness where the pelvis is, because a lot of kids have anterior pelvic tilt, so it helps with
Right.
pelvic positioning and being able to fire through the ground and thigh swing, etc. Like he's a triple jump guy, and he's done so many studies, and it's a great thing to help certain athletes, right? Well, actually most athletes
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to use their core while at high speeds.
Right.
Because, and it's lightweight, it's this thing. But the funny thing about it is what he said was he said different level, different problems.
Right.
And when he said that, he said the majority of the athletes at a certain level who, like, let's say athletes who triple jump 40 feet. He said, yeah, the majority of the time they have these same problems. So to get someone to state who's a 40-foot triple jumper, or to get someone to state who's a 5'8" high jumper, it's like, okay, hey, clean up the penultimate, work on the transition, or patience throughout the layout. Like those are kind of,
Right.
two things, right? Or hey, stay like here, then tuck the chin, whatever.
Right.
Like just little nuggets, because they've already amassed to a certain level, right?
Right.
But now when we're talking about, well, what got you here is not going to get you over 6 feet. And I
Yes.
remember talking with a good friend of mine, and he's really great high jump coach. And he was like, I remember when he first was like, hey, your girl's knee is bent. Your girl's got to straighten her leg out. And I was like, what do you mean my girl's got to straighten her leg out? And he was like, she's got to straighten out. I can't remember how, like, this is so long ago,
Right.
because I did high jump. And at one point, I hated high jump altogether. Like, I was like, high jump is such a backwards event. Literally, everything else goes this way. High jump
Right.
goes that, right? And everything else you can kind of muscle. High jump, you got to relax even more. It's a touch a different thing. You got to be elastic, more
Right.
rhythmic. And he was like, "Yeah, you just gotta." He was like, "Yeah, you got to do this." And he was like, "Yeah," because he was like, "What's happening is." He's like, he's like, yeah, she's jumping 5'10", 5'11", but it's not going to get over 6'2".
Right.
And I was like, okay, okay.
Right.
And I listen. Like I'm coachable as a coach because
Hmm.
it's like you have to be. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It shouldn't be about you,
Yeah.
right? And it's our experience together, coach athlete, as opposed to not just my my experience as a coach telling you as an athlete.
Right.
It's your experience and like we talk about the learning piece. I always tell people when they're learning something, learn it fast because once you lay the myelin like that, on the nervous system,
Yep.
if you teach it to them slow, and you're wondering why kids are doing certain things slow, and they're like, "Well, why do you want them to learn to do it fast?" I said, "I need them to get to the highest level that they can manage
Yes.
initially, because if they learn it fast, they do it fast." But if
Hmm.
we learn it all, doing a ton of slow things, we get into trouble when we try to break that pattern. And so when you
Right.
said, I believe you're absolutely right. Five terrible reps, like especially in their initial learning of something,
Yeah.
hardwired.
Yeah.
That's the pattern
Yeah.
that you got to work to figure out.
Yeah.
So if you can connect it to something different, because how many times have you said, "Hey, do this," and they go and like, "Hey, go try to touch the rim," and they just do everything right, and it's like, "Well, how come you? Well, that's different." And it's like, "No, no,
No.
what you just did is everything that I wanted you to do. Do that there," and they're like, "I can't do that there because that's not this."
Right.
So it's like now you have to. What I'll do is hey, we're going to do a certain number of reps here, and then we're trying to take it right to the other thing and connect it.
Yeah.
But we can connect it, the faster we can make that connection, the better.
Yeah.
Because like I'll do some whole part whole, but it's like we got to get it back to the whole, especially for the high jump. You got to get it's the approach is not long enough,
Right.
and their ability to do it is not. It's like it's it's one of those events that as they understand it temporally, finding the timing, finding the rhythm, making sure everything's syncing up.
Yeah.
All it is a refinement of that timing, refining, 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 refining.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, hey, that's it. You're done. You're done for the day. And now we move on. But if it's like, I think the jump rope helps that because
Yes.
especially for the multis, coming from one event to another event, you're coming from like fast hurdles, which is shoulders forward and down, like shoulders forward and
Right.
trying to get down, and then you're going from being down to I need you to be up and backwards. So I need you to be more
Yeah.
rhythmic and bouncy. And
Right.
we talk about it. It's not the event; it's the discipline.
Hmm.
Discipline of hurdling versus the discipline of high jump. Polar opposite.
Yeah.
How do you shift gears? Are you enough of an athlete to shift those gears
Right.
from one thing to the next thing? Some people can. Most kids, if they're not, but that's why being an athlete is also challenging your ability to
Yes.
change and adapt and be resilient and maneuver. Go from high positions to low positions, go from left to right, like that total awareness. Hey,
Yeah.
can I, you know, I'll say this, and you guys like like Deion Sanders going from a football game to a baseball game.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
At that level,
Yeah.
to shift gears that
Action.
swiftly
Yeah.
is insane
Yeah.
because it's like I have to be this astute at this level.
Yes.
I get on a plane, I'm jet lag, I'm sure, probably a little bit dehydrated, and then I come out here and I got to play a football game.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Wow. Yeah. I think, man, getting that ability out of the kids, when you're talking about levels and awarenesses of types and what's required out of the event, like I've lost track. because I one of the first things I used to look for were universals.
Mm,
There's every discipline is totally different, and at the same time, I was looking for what do track and field athletes need to have in order to be successful, and like okay, what Olympic lifts, squat, power, this, that, you go through and it's like, okay, you've got that. And you're talking about core strength,
yeah.
the ability to get that leg straight. You show someone that demonstration, that stick drill where they throw the stick at
Uh,
the ground and it does the flip over the bar. I'm like, you don't even see that thing lay out. It just spins. And I'm
yeah.
like, and it's not completely accurate because I think, first of all, the human body doesn't line up as a stick. And
No.
secondly, once the human body, unless your muscle control is perfect, you can't keep your joint stability locked
Mm,
completely. There's little give in there. The
yeah.
better you can keep it, obviously, the better that force is going to transfer up through the stick, which I agree with you on. So I'm like, I've done that same thing. Like I said, I want that leg straight. I don't, and I wasn't mentioning the fact that it needed to start straight. Mine was like, yeah, I like it to once you're off the ground, that leg is extended. That's one thing, but yeah, it needs to be straight when you get there also. Now there's going to be a slight
Right? Yeah.
little break because
Oh yeah.
your joint stability isn't that great, but getting down low and bending that knee and spending more time on the ground is not
Hmm.
it. We need to get up and off there because we're already programming in that slide step and that long step. I'm like, I it's so paradoxical for the kids. Like, I want to go really really fast, but yet this step is going to be longer than the
Hmm.
one that you took before. It's going to get out in front of you and it's going to stop you and enable you to transfer your weight up through. But it's still
Yeah.
got to happen fast. It's like,
Okay.
so,
So it's funny you say that. So two things came to mind. So one of the things when you say that, when you said you look for universals, I always
mhm,
tell people, I said there's one human body. So there only can be so many movement sequences and patterns,
mhm.
or efficient ones, because we see sporadic ones that are just like, what
Yeah.
are you doing?
What are we doing? Right.
It's like, what are you doing? But when they're sequenced properly, they create a vertical joint, they create Olympic lift, they can create they can create set a block start
Mhm,
because the commonalities in those movements. And then so when you're looking at it, it's like, well, there's only one human body. So leverage and being able to use the levers and use the core, right,
mhm,
properly with good posture is key. Now, one of the things that Brooks Johnson said, and he was talking about hurdling. And what I found, like, what was interesting is Dayron Robles is an Olympic hurdler, like, was a world record holder. He was a
mhm.
high jumper when he was young.
Right.
So is Lou Young. And then you had Alan Johnson, who was 27, like 26, 27 foot long jumper.
Mhm,
And so he said you have to be able to apply a superior force. And so when you're moving horizontally at a high velocity, the superior force has to be vertical,
mhm.
or you're gonna run right through the hurdle.
Yeah.
So so and like we see this with multis who are really fast. When they're slower, they high jump better. And then as they get faster and faster, they're not able to time it up or get into more extreme positions
Yes.
to be away from the bar. And it's like, oh, well, it's faster, so everything's sped up. And it's like, well, now you can get into this position. They're like, no, 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 I don't want to be there. And it's like, well,
Right.
look, you're here, and now that's going to take you here. If you were there, it would take you there.
Yep.
And they don't not want to be there. There's like that just feels like it feels wrong. And it's like, yeah, a lot of times wrong is right. Is
Right.
a lot of times what feels wrong is actually right because you've never done it before.
Yeah.
So it's like it's interesting. It's such an interesting thing because now it's like, can I can I apply the vertical force through the block properly?
Mhm.
Can I make sure that I'm closing up my levers so that I'm in a
Right.
strong position,
Right.
right? Like, can I be disciplined enough to stay away and allow for the forces to do what they do?
Yeah.
Because we actually are doing some force plate, but we'll do vertical jumps. We'll do vertical jumps on the track. We'll do vertical jumps in the weight room on the force
Right.
plate. And you'll see certain athletes stress short and reflex isn't the same. And it's like, well, such and such jumps better from a short approach than they do from a full approach. It's like, yeah, because their amortization phase is this. So they
Yeah.
can't handle the higher speed just yet.
Right.
What do we do? Well, we got to learn to accelerate that, and whether that be plyometrics, depth jumps, whether it be like we'll use Vertimax to where it's hey, understanding, accelerating it down and then reversing it. We use
Yeah.
K-box today because it's
Right.
like they have to get used to understanding, hey, I need to be able to make stop it and take it the other direction. Or I
Hmm.
need to stop it from going this way and go back that way.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that's body control, but it's also force. Is how well do we handle force?
Yeah.
How do well we produce force, manage force, direct force?
It's it's so amazing to me how much growth has happened in athletics in the last 40 years. Like when I went to
Hmm.
UCLA, I got into kinesiology because I remember seeing a stick figure um, thing on a DOS black screen, green
Yes.
figure. The stick figure was spiking a volleyball, and this was like in 1980.
Mm.
So I was like a sophomore in high school, and they showed it, and I think that was the Olympics we boycotted, but it was one of the new snazzy computers and everything, right? And now
Yeah,
you're thinking,
yeah.
wow, what a I mean, I when I was an undergrad at UCLA, we used to put pictures on the wall and put the joint markers on with
Yes.
pencil and draw it in once you took the picture off and you look at the stick positions. Now you got computers to do all that wonderfully, right? So,
Yep,
but I
yep.
remember just seeing the arm swing and everything in this slow motion, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And that got me into, like I said, I was already kind of a junior biomechanist. Maybe that started it because I remember that, but then we started watching video, and that definitely helped. But it's like, in the last 40 years, the knowledge is just so amazing. I mean, the stuff that you and I are talking about, I remember when I was at UCLA, I talked to John Smith, one of the great sprint coaches
Oh.
of history, and we were talking about, the different fast twitch and,
Hmm.
different things. And I learned a lot of things from John that, you know, weren't necessarily pointed straight at high jumping, but they helped.
They
And,
correlated.
because I was, God, I was so slow in high school. I ran a 5 flat 40. I played free safety, and they're like, "I thought you're on the track team." I'm like, "No, I'm a jumper, man." I mean, I was slow, but I had good range. I could run
Yes.
okay. I had long loping strides. And then when I would get there, I'd just go jump up and take it, so
There
it's
you
like,
go.
I could do that. But it was like, you're talking about speed and CNS involvement and stride. I learned stride length times stride rate. It was so long
Yes.
ago. And that has formed so many things that I do with the kids now. I'm like, I want you to be able to control your body. So that I love seeing all the ladders and the
Hmm.
speed and the quick feet and the agility stuff. And I'm like, even if it doesn't apply directly, I'm like, that's still super athletic and it's still exhibiting an amazing amount of fast control and precision. I'm like, it has to be precise. So I've started having my kids do what I call hashes. I take them
Hmm.
out to the football hashes and I have them go left foot on a hash, right foot on the grass, left foot on the next hash, right foot on the grass. And I go,
Hmm.
let's walk it first or just jog it. And I'm like, you have to hit every one. I go, I want you to
Hmm.
hit and it's literally 5 yards. I go, if we go 5 yards and you have a 10-step approach, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I go, that's
Hmm.
1 through 10. So you're going to hit line, grass, line, grass, line, grass, line, grass, line, grass. I said, and then if you can do that, then we'll pick it up. So you go line, grass, line, grass, line, grass, line, grass, line, grass. I go,
Yes.
but you got to hit. And it's amazing. You start getting them to go faster and they start missing, or their
Yes.
strides get too long too quick because it's only a half a yard. It's really not
Yep.
that far. So I'm
No,
like,
no.
yeah, but I want you to go. And then I've taken them, I run through a range of speeds And then I'll go, now let's try to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's do an acceleration pattern. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, all the time I'm doing that to see how many steps you have in your approach again? 9. Okay, let's just do 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're working on acceleration pattern and everything. Like, okay, now let's go to a yard. So now you're gonna hit everyone. So I'm working on stride length, their
Yeah.
their timing, their rhythm, and then
Yes.
acceleration patterns all in the same workout. So it's like, and then I keep stretching it. And I'm like, let's see. I said, I think it's easy. Once I'm up to speed, I can go 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards pretty easily. When I go to 2.5, I start having to switch. I can't cycle anymore. I have to power bound. I have to like drive and reach because it's just a little too far to cycle. So it's like, and I go, and there you are looking like, Sotomayor or Derek
Yeah.
Brown or something at the start of the approach. It's like power bound, power bound, power bound. I go, it can still be pretty fast.
Oh, for sure.
I don't think it's going to beat someone who's with a high turnover sprint, but I'm like, you can see where somebody would like to do that for rhythm and then drop
Mm,
into the curve from there. So that's something that I've been doing that I really just started playing with this year. And I don't know that anybody else, there's a certain prideful part because I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do that. And I don't know if it has great value. My gut instinct says yes. And that's why I've been
mhm.
doing it. I'm like, we're just going to keep doing it. And I want to keep getting you to get all of these aspects covered between stride length, stride rate,
Yep.
precision, the accuracy, the speed of it, from boom, 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 and then boom, 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 and then just keep picking up the speed to where you're just getting a blur. And I said, but then you've got to realize that as your strides get longer, you probably won't be able to go quite as quick, and
Hmm.
there's that relationship. I said, I want you to learn the relationship between stride rate and stride length, because at the start of the high jump approach, both of those should be increasing at the
Yeah.
start. Your stride length is going to stretch out. And
Yep.
so is the amount of force that you're putting on them. And so is the speed. I'm like, they're all picking up. And now one of them might peak out before the other. And so if
Yeah.
your stride rate is your length is set, the only way for you to accelerate is to quicken up your feet, you know.
Yep.
But I
Yep.
have other athletes that will quicken up their feet, but their strides will get shorter because they don't cycle. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
are you really getting faster or are you just moving faster and convincing
Already.
yourself that you're actually speeding up when you're not? So
Mm.
yeah, it's an interesting another aspect.
You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like dribbling. We do these dribble drills,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially that like shortened strides, and you're trying to attack the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do ankle dribbles, calf dribbles, knee dribbles. So now and a lot of times when you're bringing the leg up over the calf, it's
Mm-hmm.
like it wants to open up. And it's like, no, you got to force it right back down. You can't let it get away from you.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes me think. So the past 7 years, I've been in Canada, and like we've had some pretty good athletes up there. So
Right.
when I was up there, at one point, Derek Droin was training like before his injuries and stuff, and
Right.
like they talked about like one of the things I think Jeff Huntoon was a guy who was questioning him at the time was talking about was like the relation between tempo and high jump takeoff.
Mm-hmm.
But the ground contact time is similar. It's
Right.
slower than a sprint, but it's not a jog. It's more like a rhythmic, it's a more of a tempo run.
Right. Right.
Helps to create that elasticity.
Right.
Reason why like most people who can high jump can actually run like quarters
Mm-hmm.
because of that the elastic efficiency.
Right.
But in Cuba, what they'll do is they'll do 100 yards of balance for speed, 100 yards bound for distance, and then just kind of a marriage of it,
Right.
because now it's going to help you figure out, hey, what's too much. And I want to say in this is one of the European countries, they did that with sprinting. So they
Mm-hmm.
would do like a sprint where they're just, hey, take as many steps as you can over the 100 meters,
Right.
right? Firing up the CNS. Now I want you to take as few steps over the 100 meters. And your timing is right. So you're trying to see,
Yeah.
hey, are you a person who's here? Are you a person who's here?
Right.
When are you? because some people may be more frequency oriented, some people may
Yes.
be more power oriented.
Right.
And so when you're making the adjustment to their natural sprint, and it translates to the 100 like crazy, because now it's like, well, you struggle with X. And if we can get a little bit more without losing the other
Right.
side of if we can get a little more stride length without losing the frequency,
You're going to be
guess what?
faster, period.
Oh, you're faster.
Yeah.
Oh, bar
If your
none.
turnover is the same, if you and I have the exact same turnover and your strides are a millimeter longer than mine, you're faster
You're
because
faster.
you're going to cover more ground in the same amount of time.
Mhm.
So yeah, but if it's a centimeter or it's an inch or whatever, like you said, that adds up quick. And now instead of losing by 2 inches, you're losing by 2 feet or you're losing by
Oh,
10 feet, or whatever it is. So it's like, yeah, stride rate, stride length. I love hearing that stuff. That's like, that to me is where it's so interesting because we're all working on our own parts of the puzzle. And
mhm.
I have yet to read the textbook that says, here's exactly how you get from here to here.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yes.
hey, I see that drill. And that's like I said, I saw some of the stuff you're doing, and I'm like, oh, dude, I love that. Jonina Brinson was on here
Mhm.
a couple, just it's been this year, towards the end of last year when I was in school last year. So yeah, and she's up at Eastern Washington, I think, and I saw a drill, that I was like, oh, I see the leaning to the side. I got to be a high jumper, holding on to something with a weight on it, like a stick, and weight
Yes.
on the side. I'm like, this is pulling them this way, so they have to go this way. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I like that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and I took that and I modified it, and I used those real heavy elastic bands. I would wrap it
Yes.
around something, and I would just have them grab onto it, arm straight, and lean back and then lean
Yes.
to their left or to the right and get them into the stick position. I'm like, I want you straight. You're from your foot
Yes.
straight up to your shoulder. And I said, and wherever your shoulders are, try to keep your head perpendicular, not straight up. I
Yes.
think when they're like this and their head comes this way, that the rest is going to go
Wherever
immediately,
the head goes,
right?
the body's gonna follow.
So I'm like, line this up. I said, your new vertical is here. This is vertical for you. This not here. This is you standing straight up and down. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. I tell them, if you get a basketball player or volleyball player, you say, jump up and touch that like on the vertex,
Yes.
come up and they jump straight up. And I go, that's easy because they're only dealing in one dimension.
Mention.
All you do when you're doing that is you go lean back, you go heel toe, your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
your hips, your knees, everything's on the same level. And you just go straight
Yes.
up and you come straight down, you land on both feet. I go, our event is nothing like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to run up, you're going to be on a curve. I said, as soon as you're running on something that's not straight and you are running on a curve, you are by definition leaning to that
Yes.
side. And I said, we need you to lean. I said, if I could get you to run 1 inch off the ground and keep cycling like crazy and be fast, and you could hit here, you would swing all the way up at high speed and go vertical. I go, that would
Yes.
be better, depending. Maybe they wouldn't be able to get off the ground from that position, but you get the analogy. But I'm like, I watched, Doug Nordquist when he jumped, 236, and he showed the video of that. I had seen him jump and jumped against him, but the first time I saw Doug run an approach where he dropped over to like a 30 or 35-degree angle, and this is on what I call a
Pressure.
boomerang run through, right? I've
Yeah.
never quantified that number, but I'm guessing because I've been able to get some of my kids to do it, and they've gotten to 30, and I know Doug was both faster and more skilled, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to assume that he got over there. So it's like, you're watching that, and I'm just like, man, that force, and you're seeing. I'm like, I've never seen anybody run that fast because he was like a gazelle, and
Mm-hmm.
but he was 6'5". But yet,
Yeah.
I tell the kids all the time, like, you tell them you don't want to get shorter, right? You don't want them to hunch forward like a hurdler. So I'm like, you
Nope.
gotta stand up. And I go,
And
paradoxically, if we could, I'd want you to run fast and be able to lean backwards at the same time,
yeah.
so you can let your hips lead the way, right? But I also need you to lean to your left. So they're like going, okay, this is crazy. I'm like, yeah, it is a little bit, but you can do all these things at high speed. I said, but the
Mm-hmm.
only way that I want you to get shorter is by running a better and better curve.
Yes.
That way you get shorter, but I still want you running tall and cycling. And they're looking at you like, how can I run tall when I'm leaning like this? I'm like, well, it's not easy, but I go, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And then, if it's like when you're running, I tell them, I go, in order, running in a straight line is easy. I
Yes.
go, look at how many people run the 100 that don't run the 200. I said, what's the
Oh,
difference?
we
They
got
can't run a curve.
got
They
into
can't run a
this.
curve. It's like I go, if it was so easy to run a curve, everybody would run the 100 and the 200. I go, that's not the case because the second 100 can't be that hard because you're already moving when you hit the second 100.
No, and listen, I got into we are talking about the athletes who run good hundreds who can't run the turn,
Yeah.
and it was a whole thing, and they're like, well, they're just not interested in it. I was like, shut up. I was like, that's not the reason. I said you can say that. I said you can say that, but I
Hmm.
can guarantee you if you're saying that they ran this one for money, if they could get double for running the other event, I'm sure they would. And
Exactly.
they race these events. Their coaches had them race it. Like these are very proud people. They're not getting out there to get their butts kicked. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So I was like, but what you're saying is 100%. And one of the things like we did so I was having an issue with the jumper and they're doing it. I'm like, I feel like you're tiptoeing through the turn instead of, actively attacking the
Right.
turn. And I was like, like you're telling them, you say all the stuff. And so I was like, okay, let's try something a little bit different. So we're doing little circle runs and I put the little mini hurdles. Usually I do cones. So I'm like, if they step on the cone, it smushes out. And
Yeah.
they're like, I can't apply force to the ground. I keep decelerating. I was like, this is actually, I said, I set them up shorter than your normal stride. So technically, you should have been able to put your foot down. And I
Yeah.
was like, I cannot put my foot down on the ground hard enough. I can't, I'm just decelerating through the whole thing. Because we
Right.
kept stalling out. I was like, we're getting up, but we're just stalling out at the top. And I was like, I was like, you're straightening out your last two steps because what I'm seeing is like you're straightening it out, so you're losing your lean. So you're
Yes.
standing up and now you're trying to jump this way, and then you're just dying over the top of the bar. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh my goodness. I was
Yeah.
like, you have to be patient. Stay here the whole time.
Yes.
Allow for the takeoff to release you out of that. You don't
Yeah.
go you don't create like let this happen instead of you trying to force it and
Yeah.
you just destroyed everything you worked for. And so we spent so much time just doing that. And I was like, we did it so much. Like I was just like, hey, let's go. Because it wasn't like it's some stress on the ankles, but it's like she wasn't able to do it fast enough to create the pressure on the ankles.
Yeah.
So I was like, so she's doing it, and then she finally started to see this, and she's accelerating through it. And I was
Yeah.
like, hey, there we go.
Yeah.
That's what, and it was like, I can feel it now. I can feel myself actually attacking the turn as opposed to just kind of backing off it.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. So I was like, okay, hey, now 5 yards and then run into it.
Yeah.
All right, 10 yards. Well, at 10 yards, I'm able to actually do it better. Of course,
Hmm.
I can do it better because now you have a little more speed going in.
Yes.
But I was like, we made it tight initially because you just have to learn how to put your feet down,
Yeah.
like get it up and get it back down
Hmm.
and work through it. Because I'm like, we've walked it, we've skipped it, we've done all the stuff. And this is like, sometimes you have to add some additional, some external stuff because it's like, they may not get it. Like, it's like training wheels.
Hmm.
They may not get it with the verbiage. They
Right.
may they may need something additional. And now it's like what it is. I tell them, I said, okay, this is your problem to solve.
Right.
You know what you're supposed to do. We talked about it. If I asked you the question, you understand it. Hey, I'm gonna step back and let you solve this problem. And you'll see them. It allows for them to be more athletic. It allows for them to take control of the training. Now
Right.
it's not coach's drill, it's my drill.
Right.
And you're watching them and you see them saying, okay, hey, when I'm doing this and well, hey, you know what? Coach usually tells me to lean. So now they're processing it.
Right.
And this is just another level of learning. Like I taught high school and we call it it's called you're a teacher,
Yeah.
gradual release,
Right.
meaning I need to release the learning to you
Right.
so that you can solve the problem. Because I'm not going to be in the grocery store. I'm not going to be there
Right.
at the park. I'm not going to be,
Yeah.
in the house where you're
You got to be
doing,
able to take it and run with it.
Yeah, I need the critical thinking component of it to happen from you. The adjustment has to happen. Like I've already given you the tools.
Right.
Do you understand how to use them? And I'm watching, I'm observing, and I'm just seeing the wheels turning. And you see them just lighting up and glowing and glowing. And now you're building confidence because it's like, I got it now. So then you take the training wheels off and it's just like, phew, and it's like, oh, I really got it now. It's like, well, yeah, that was the goal. But if we don't have goal-oriented training, then we're just out there, we're doing things that it works for the activity, but it doesn't work for the athlete.
Oh God, you brought that up earlier. That was one thing I really liked what you said. When you do I tend to I've broken it in this way just because it makes it easier for me.
Hmm.
So I talk about the straight, the curve, the takeoff, the flight, and the layout. So
Hmm.
my brain has gone through and said, okay, these are the drills I like to do for this.
Hmm.
These are the strength things that we need to do for this, or the technique drills that need to be done for that, or whatever. So I've got how I go, this is the easiest one, guys. How do you run a straight line? I said, I would appreciate if your knees are as high as your hips. I would like your heels kicking you in the butt if you can.
Hmm.
You got all kinds of drills for that. A skip, B skip, um, D's cycle, knees down cycle, knees up cycle, like backwards
Hmm.
running. We run through all kinds of stuff. He said running in a straight line is a lot easier than running in a curve. So now we're going to learn how to run a curve. And we do that. But like you were saying something about that earlier, like how does this transfer? Like I don't like to just do a bunch of drills. Sometimes I do. Like if I'm doing a clinic, I'm just like start
Hmm.
running through the gamut. We're going to do a bunch of stuff. And it's like I came up with a list for Barbara one time. She goes, after like a week of working with me, she goes, when you break down my video, what do you see? And I go, well, and I literally went and I wrote about a page and a half of things that I see that are technical. I said, when you run the curve, I want you to do this. I want your last two steps to be heel, toe, heel, toe. I want this.
Yes.
And I go through and I show her a bunch of stuff. And she was like, oh my God, that helps me so much. And I said, now, if you notice when we jump at a meet, I would tell her one thing. And that's usually
Hmm.
it. Because I don't want to sit there and go, okay, now you ready? When you start, I want you to cycle and get your knees up and accelerate. Those are givens after a while. They should be in there. Like I don't want to have to give you a reminder course. That needs to be in there. Now, those are things that I can see when you're not doing them or you are doing them or whatever. But so
Hmm.
it's like this checklist that you can go through, right? So it's like, okay, there's all these different pieces. But if I'm watching a kid and like you said, I got this one kid, I love him, but he comes up and and all the drills we do, arms up. I'm like, drive your arms all the way up here. I want them as high up as you can get them, as fast as you can get them. And I said, after that, we'll figure out what we want to do with them. But you got to give me this first. So
Yes.
you do that. And then he comes over to the high jump and he goes, and one arm comes up here and the other one shoots out straight. And then he puts him down immediately like this. I'm just like, dude, we just did this drill. I go, what do I want you to get them up here? I said, I don't care if you started the single arm and bring the other one up to join it, or you got them both back behind you, but let's get your arms up. And so that's so many times I got to remember there's times I'm like, okay, you guys we're not hitting the curve. So I said, today I had them run around a circle 2 times
Hmm.
before they jumped. I go lean and accelerate, accelerate, accelerate.
Yes.
If you like your steps when you get there, hit the gas and take off.
Yes.
And
I did the same thing.
and you can see sometimes it'll transition, they'll get it. Other times just and you said something interesting earlier too, and you're talking about teaching her to lean. And this is my contention, it's that if the overall rules of the high jump say we should be accelerating throughout, which most would agree. I don't know, I've never asked, but that's what I was taught.
Yeah, you're supposed to
Like
accelerate.
each step, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, all the way through. If each step is getting faster,
Hmm.
especially through the curve, some people argue four. I'm a big 5-step guy, but if you want to run
Hmm.
four, I can work with you. It's not a what do you call it? A
Six,
deal
four,
breaker.
five, five.
But it's
No.
like if you run through, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My contention is you should go from straight up and down because I'm running my curve, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I should be
Mm.
able to increase my lean throughout the curve simply
Because you're
because I'm going
accelerating.
faster.
Hmm.
And the last thing you want to do is go 1, 2, 3. 4 or 5. And like you're
Yes.
step back off the curve and come up, because if I'm already here, like you said, I'm going to lose, because I've given a name to the guy in the middle of the pit. I call him Mr. Momentum, because every time you run around the curve, you're going to go to Mr. Momentum's party. You're going to end up in the middle of the pit. You always end up there. I go, it doesn't matter. I go, I can teach you to jump as hard as I can away from the bar, drive your knee that way, throw your arms that way. You still end up over there. You just don't get
Mhm.
there as quickly. So,
Yes.
but this, I've just said, just recently, I watched some films, and it seems like almost all the jumpers that I'm training can get into the position that I want them in 2 steps before the bar. So when they're on their left leg, 2 steps before they actually jump, their position is better than when they take off, because they'll start to stand up. I'm like, you need to stay here or increase this. You can't come out of it. You got to stay all the way to your plant. I remember my coaches teaching me that even in high school. Stay in your lean all the way to the plant. Don't start stepping off the curve, because when
Don't
you
step
do
off
that, you
it.
start that and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Well, hey, Harold, we could keep going. Okay. We could keep going all night. And I mean, I would.
Where are we?
I
Where
would
are
get
we
in
now?
trouble.
Oh man, this is oh geez.
I know we put an hour and a half.
All
It
right.
is a blast. We got to do this again. I'm never just saying that to say it, because that I've had just a great time doing this already. So, um, but I don't want to keep you up, and you're on the other end of the country, so it's
No,
only 8:30 for me.
well,
But
well, I got a flight in the morning. I got to fly out to Colorado for the coaching convention. And I think I'm gonna be on the West Coast. I'm supposed to go see Jeremy Fisher some point really soon. Because
let me know. Let me know. I'm not that far from. I'm in Southern California, so he's down in Chula Vista in San Diego. So I'm like really close by. My parents live like a stone's throw from there. So, and
oh
we're
man,
coming up around the holidays. So
San
definitely,
Diego, beautiful. It's like
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I've only been there once. And I haven't hit any of the magic times when there's been meets. I know he had a lot of competitions there a few years ago, but yeah, I've been down there and looked around. I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. I had one athlete that was going to go last year, and then I stopped training him, so I didn't get a chance to go and watch it when some of the bigger meets were happening. But yeah, I've had a podcast early 2 years ago, early when I just started doing the podcast, and Jeremy was very gracious and came on, and
Mm.
just great guy. And yeah, I'd love to get down there. So it'd be cool to meet you and face to face, and go down and do the same with Jeremy. So keep me in mind. I would definitely like to make that happen.
No, absolutely, absolutely. No, listen, I think like I said, like I've been in Canada for the past 7 years, and the biggest advantage that the American coaches have is that we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
We I think American coaches enjoy competition. And so you don't, it's like, hey, I don't want to be the kid that's inept. I
Right.
want coaches around to get the information, and everyone's learning. Like the community it's so different, because you would think as Americans it would be the opposite.
Right.
But it's like, no, the coaches want good conversation. It's like, hey, if you see a coach who has a kid and they're like, hey, your kid's got to do this and this. Your kid is like, and
Yeah.
you they're like, you're gonna tell them well that kid's gonna beat us. It's like, well, we need to be better.
Right.
Like, because
Yeah.
in like at this level, you don't get as much opportunity for that. Like I think you have coaches who you talk to and you consult with, and you guys have your whatever. But I think for the most part, you want to see people maximize their potential.
Yes.
And that's such an important thing. And understanding that the coaches being better is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Well, hey, again, thanks so much. I would I would literally keep going, but my brain's starting to shut off, and I know you got your flight. But yeah, we'll do it again. Keep me
yes,
in the
sir.
loop, and good luck this upcoming season. You guys got indoor happening here pretty soon, right?
Yes, sir.
No,
Mid-January.
mid-January. Absolutely. We're just
I
starting
know.
up some of our all comers out here, even at the high school level. I coach some high school, some masters, some elite, and some college. So I'm kind of all of them are, and it's weird out here because indoor doesn't have the same meaning in California because there are
No,
no indoor places. So,
no.
even when we're going to indoor nationals for Vanguard, the meets that we go to qualify at are all outdoor meets. So it's kind of funny because there is no indoor. So you
Mm,
just have to get
That's
a mark
gotta
and
go
then
to
you
like
get to go
Seattle.
compete. Yeah, exactly. I
No,
didn't go
but
up there.
no, for sure. No, I think, like I said, I know I'm gonna make my way out that way. Like, hopefully, you get an opportunity to come out to Nashville. I would say this, having been in Canada, having been to the West Coast, and having been here, I think is the people aren't too different, which is like being from Florida. People from Florida are a little bit different than the
Right.
people, but no, the people here is a really cool place.
I got a good friend of mine is living in Nashville. So he's a record producer. Marcus Aurelius, if you're listening, I call him Marcus Aurelius. Uh, he's he reminds me of Russell Crowe. He's big, thick guy. Was a shooting guard in
Yes.
college. So and a great golfer, a good friend of mine. So anyway, Marcus lives in Nashville now. So and he moved out there from here to get closer to the record industry, to the roots of the music industry. So all right,
Mm,
let's
right.
do this, Harold. I love
Have a
it.
good one. Oh,
Hey,
anchor
thanks so much
down.
for your time. All right. Hey,
Yeah.
wait. How was that
So,
go?
so
Okay.
it's anchor down. So it's thumb always to the left. Yep. So our so here at Vanderbilt, anchor down is our slogan. Means like
Okay.
be steady, be strong. You know, when you drop the anchor of the ship, you're gonna
You
be
got to
able
be
to.
left hand or right hand. Does it matter?
So better for like so if you're on your left hand, you're gonna turn the other way. If it's on the right hand, it's right. There you go.
All right.
Perfect. All right. Take care.
Learn something new every day. Thanks, Harold.
No worries.
And that's going to wrap it up here tonight on Raise the Bar. Many thanks to our guest, Harold Rose, the vertical jumps coach from Vanderbilt University. We spent quite a long time and had a great time talking. It's not the longest podcast ever, but it's up there. So be prepared to break it into pieces if you're listening as you're driving to and from work, which is how I always listen to all my best podcasts. And until next time, we will see you here on Raise the Bar with Troy Haines. And thanks for listening in.